Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about pension transfer advice and what you can expect as a client. And in helping in today's video we have Nathaniel Jacobs joining us from Hull in Yorkshire. Good morning, Nathaniel. How are you?
Good morning, Dominic. Yes, I'm very well, thank you. How about yourself?
Very good, very good. So Nathaniel, I want to draw on some of your experience over the past months working here at Cameron James, dealing with clients in the UK, outside of the UK, and just going into some of your experience with these people. Nathaniel, what would you say has been your biggest experience of people who are coming through looking for a defined contribution pension transfer? What's the main reason that they're typically saying, or what are the main goals or objectives when you're going through their client profile with them?
Yes, so the key thing for a lot of people is clarity. They're looking to get some idea of what their pension actually is. A lot of the time, it's one of those things that you just contribute to. It comes out of your paycheck. You don't really think about it. And it's this pot that's built up over time. And it comes to the point where you're thinking, right, okay, I've got 5 years to retirement and I want to start thinking about it. What should I do going forward? So clarity is a key thing for a lot of people. And then I'd say this second and third, probably joint second is either fees or performance. They're unhappy about the fees that they're getting charged at the moment. Once again, they're in an expensive fund. They're either in an expensive pension scheme, or the performance is poor. They're not seeing any growth in the pension, so they want to address that.
Yeah, and when you talk about performance, like with the majority of your clients, would you say they're familiar with the performance of their plans, or people don't have a clue about the performance of their plans? What would you say is kind of your general experience?
Yeah, they tend to have a sort of maybe like a cash idea of what has grown from over the past year or 5 years, but when it comes to percentages and allocations in terms of their portfolio, they don't really know what's invested.
Yeah, understood. And do you think that when people get, say, their advice report back from us and it has their 5-year return compared to our portfolio, do you think this is a point that clients start to perhaps realize, okay, maybe my money wasn't allocated as efficiently, or perhaps not in line with their actual risk profile of what it should have been?
Yeah, absolutely. They're normally shocked at the performance comparison, which it's a difficult thing to really understand until you come and get an advice report. It's difficult to see what the performance could be in comparison to what they're currently sat in. So they're normally quite surprised at the difference in terms of what they've been sat in and what it could be invested in.
And would you say that difference in performance from the cases and the clients that you've worked with is typically just purely down to them, the percentage split of, say, equities versus bonds, i.e. they just haven't had enough equity in their portfolio based on their own actual risk profile, or it comes down to the equity funds they have been invested in just not particularly being good ones or not performing well?
A mixture of the two, yeah. What we tend to see is workplace schemes is where a significant amount of the capital is being saved up. And generally those workplace schemes, and this is just generalizing here, but what the employer will look at is a fund which is pretty basic, where somebody can contribute into it, and that fund is supposed to cover the full workforce. So you think of the difference between you and your colleagues' financial circumstance, it can be significant. So when we're looking at our portfolios here, we're constructing them to your risk, your attitude to risk. So it's if you're in a really low risk fund at a young age, you could have far too much exposure to bonds than you need, whereas you could have more exposure to equities. So that's really what is the key difference between people's performance in the schemes.
And what would you say, I know we were discussing this a couple of weeks ago, so it's a trick question slightly, but what would you say is it sometimes that holds client back? So, they go away and do their research, they submit a letter of authorities, they go through that draining process of us getting the information, we then put the advice reports together. Sometimes clients then just seem to kind of go a little bit cold, as it were, or just not then proceed with the actual most important part, which is implementing the advice. So in your experience, why is that? And what do you do sometimes with your clients when they've gone through all the hard work, they're then at the point where they can sort of pull the trigger to actually make positive changes to their portfolios. How do you deal with clients at that stage?
Yeah, it's time a lot of the time. It's life gets in the way. Work, like you might get busy at work. You might have kids. Might be getting married. All these things get in the way, and all of a sudden, your retirement in 20, 30 years time can get pushed to the back of the queue. So that's why it's really important for to take action on it, and allow us to do that work for you, so it saves you a lot of the time.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people often, I remember when I was advising, like I say, I haven't had time to read the report, or I haven't had time to go through this, and I used to always think, well, if you haven't got time to read the advice report, how do you possibly have time to be keeping an eye of this plan or managing it yourself in terms of your existing funds in your existing workplace scheme? And Nathaniel, what else would you say with some of your, like I know you've had quite a few clients recently who've been working with some period of time, finally get back in touch or finally complete their DocuSigns. What sorts of conversations or catch-ups do you have with people when they've kind of done the hard work so far, done all the research, but haven't quite moved ahead and actually implemented the improvements and changes?
So a lot of the time it's a little bit of an emotional barrier as well. Humans don't like change. So if they know that they can see what they have at the moment, and they're quite comfortable with that. So oftentimes it is a bit of a journey to go from saying, right, okay, yeah, I'm ready to go ahead with it. I'm looking at it, to I'm ready to go ahead with it. So that is something that needs, it's a journey for each person to be able to move from one point A to point B. But without, especially if you've got funds that are underperforming, or you're being charged high costs, it's important to make those changes to eventually reach your retirement goals.
Nice. Anything else you want to add to that, Nathaniel, in terms of just general experience of dealing with clients either in the UK or overseas? And if you were to look at your clients where the advice process maybe happened more efficiently compared to the ones where the advice process was perhaps less efficient, and when I say efficient, I'm talking in terms of time, how long things have taken, what would be kind of like your general thoughts or tips to any clients that were working either with ourselves or any good financial advisor out there?
Yeah, so evidence-based, make your approach evidence-based and doing your research. It's so, at the end of the day, a lot of the time we're so caught up in our work, and we almost don't think that we can understand the sort of financials and the complications that go on with pensions. They are complicated. Pension schemes are complicated. Portfolios are complicated. However, if somebody really truly understands the products and the portfolios and the plan, they should be able to explain that to you in a way that you understand. I think it was Einstein that said that if you can't explain something in 2 sentences, you don't understand it. So the important thing when you're going through this process is that you fully understand what you're doing. Don't just be sort of so trusting in somebody that you just effectively give away full control over what you're doing because you think, oh, the financial advisor will do it. Get the advisor to explain to you in a way that you understand what's actually happening, and that can prevent a lot of headache. That is one thing that I've definitely seen in the past, is people just trusting somebody because they're wearing a nice suit, they've got a nice watch on, and then what they look at 5 or 6, 7 years down the line is actually, this is an extremely expensive product. The portfolio is not performing. The portfolio is expensive as well. And then they're trapped in they can be trapped sometimes especially in offshore structures. They can be trapped in funds for 10 years. So yeah, it's really important that you understand what you're doing and do your due diligence.
Yeah, I think it's a really valuable point, and I don't think there's never any stupid questions when it comes to financial planning. It's something I always say to all my clients, you can ask as many questions as you want, and I can explain it to you 10 times over in different ways if you need to, because our philosophy here at Cameron James, whilst whether the client asks questions or not, the outcome is going to be the same. Our solution, the underlying portfolio, the performance, nothing's going to change. I think some clients think the more they stamp their feet, the more better returns they're going to get. But yeah, I massively agree with Nathaniel that you're much better off by asking your financial advisor. I mean, you're perhaps never going to understand it as well as myself or Nathaniel or any other good financial advisor in the UK, but you should at least be trying to get to the maximum of your understanding so you can understand, okay, why are we invested in equities? Why are we invested in bonds? Why is that split like that? Why is that geographical split like that? And any good financial advisor should be comfortable discussing that with you, and it shouldn't take them more than a couple of sentences just to bring it down into layman terms rather than a lot of financial jargon which we see in the industry. Nathaniel, it's been really helpful, really insightful. Hopefully a few clients out there watching this thinking that resonates with them. I can help with them with their financial planning. So Nathaniel, thank you for joining the channel again this morning.
You're most welcome.
All right, and as always, take care with your UK pension assets.